Welcome to the In-Between Man podcast, where men can be men. Yes, it's true. And I got a couple updates for you guys today. Holy cow. And I've got a couple of updates for you guys that I think you will like. The first one being, I have finally finished the In-Between-Man website. It's www.thein-betweenman.com. And it's going to break down a little bit more about the GOTR methodology, and I'll explain that in a completely different episode. But it will also talk about the concept of, doing the right thing and really what that means. And I am going to spend a little bit more time today trying to articulate what it is like being an in-between man. And what does that mean? Where did it come from? Why is it relevant? Why is it not relevant? But what's the definition of the in-between man? And believe it or not, I have a good breakdown of it on the website. I had some help doing it. So the notion and the idea that we all need to live within a set of, morals, or, doing the right thing is a moral ideal, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to define what doing the right thing actually means, because I try to stay within these boundaries of understanding what the right thing is versus what the right thing isn't. So I'm going to explain to you and read out the copy on my website so that you can have a detailed understanding of how it works. I don't want to freeball it. I like the way that it's written here. So just give me a second. If you've ever asked yourself, why is this guy titled his podcast, The In-Between Man? Here's the reason why. Okay? And we're going to get into more detail on this later, but this is the reason why. And its foundation is really in the concept of doing the right thing. Okay? So what does it mean to be the in-between man? The concept, developed by yours truly approximately 2 years ago, originates from a fundamental moral and ethical principle: the commitment to consistently do the right thing in all areas of my life. This principle is grounded in 4 essential values: acting with integrity, considering the well-being of others, prioritizing long-term consequences over short-term gains, and adhering to the universal standards of morality, even in the absence of external accountability. Recognizing that human beings are imperfect and inevitably make mistakes, every individual is frequently confronted with the conscious or unconscious choice either to uphold or disregard these principles. The tension that arises in the space between choosing to do what is right and choosing otherwise forms the basis of the idea of the in-between man. So if you think about it, listen, I don't need to explain to you, unless you really don't know, what it means to do the right thing. Doing the right thing is acting on integrity, right? Considering the well-being of others, like opening a door for other people, right? Prioritizing long-term consequences over short-term gains. And what I mean by long-term consequences is most people don't want to go through long-term growth. Why? Because it usually hurts much longer than a short-term gain. And a short-term gain typically isn't the answer for a long-term problem. Short-term gains are usually in place to avoid accepting the long-term outcome, right? Another way of looking at doing the right thing is doing the right thing often, more times than not, is going to be more expensive, right? It's just going to be more expensive and you're not going to like it. Doing the right thing also means that we need to be patient and let things unfold when they're ready to unfold. And doing the right thing means you've accepted that there'll be emotional growth far beyond short-term gains by working and going through any type of emotional challenge. Perfect example would be I went through a divorce roughly almost 5 years ago, and it took me about 4 years to get out of it. All right. And it was not fun. I would have preferred if I had a short-term solution to that. And what would have been a short-term solution? A short-term solution would have been 6 months after getting divorced and being with one woman for a long period of time, that I go out and I jump into a relationship right out of the gate. All right. That is a short-term fix. And it isn't what I want to do. But if I don't want to accept the long-term dynamics that come with learning and growing, I might opt for something like that. So, oddly enough, I've not been in a relationship. I've not kissed a girl or made love to a woman in 4 years. But the bright side is I have a fleshlight. One of the greatest inventions ever made in mankind. That's another story for another day. Okay, so the whole idea behind the in-between man is understanding those 4 values, right? Those 4 values. Now, where it gets a little bit sketchy, or where it gets a little bit more complicated, is when you want to do the opposite of all 4 of those values. And I might even do a podcast episode where we break down the opposite meaning of integrity, right? The opposite meaning, we know the difference between short-term and long-term gains. The opposite meaning of, thinking of others, where you're only thinking about yourself and you only care about yourself, right? Those would be some of those opposite values that, and I'm not saying that we need to strive for perfection. I know that that's not possible. But if you're able to understand the opposite of those 4 values, then you're able to understand what it means to be in between. Because if you get a decision, or if you have to make a decision and you're thinking about all the ways of doing it the right way, and then you're thinking about all the ways of doing the wrong way, and you end up deciding, let's just say you go in the wrong direction, that's something that we need to look at. Only because we want to understand why. Why did I not engage in a short-term female relationship after I got divorced with being with the same woman for almost 20 years? Because I knew I wasn't ready and that my motives would have been insanely selfish. Now, some people would have said, hammer down, get out there, lay the freaking wood, clap some cheeks, get stuff done. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to be that guy. It's not to say that I can't be that guy, but I just don't want to be that guy. I don't want to purposely, hurt anyone for 5 minutes of fucking serenity in the bedroom. You know what I mean? So that's the point that I want to make sure I get across to you guys today, is that I am trying to put together, I have put together a process, but I'm trying to put together ideals and values that we as men intrinsically probably already know about, but just putting a dot on it, right? Labeling it so that we can see what it is, right? Because if we can't see what it is, then it becomes too abstract, and we usually do one of two things. We just stuff it or try to forget about it, and that never goes away. And it never goes away because you never really address the problem. And that's a lot about what we're talking about with the in-between men, is not understanding why we're stuffing anything. Where does that come from? How does it get started? Why is that my norm, right? And I've mentioned a lot of these things on previous podcasts. I believe wholeheartedly that it starts and has started with just one simple notion: emotional stoicism. Growing up and realizing that I'm not supposed to cry in front of other kids if I get beat in a wrestling match. And from there on out, not talking about your feelings was the norm, and everything was stuffed from there. And if that's something that you can ID with and identify with, then good. Because you can go back and look at that if you want to. Most people don't want to, right? But you can. One of my favorite quotes is, "The only way out of these challenges and painful times is through." We can accept that we're going through painful times and challenging times, but if we don't address them, we're standing still in a tunnel filled with sewage. And then after we get tired of standing in the tunnel full of sewage that smells, instead of walking, you just sit down, kick up your feet, and just marinate in sewage because you aren't willing or eager or inspired to keep walking. And the analogy of keep walking means if you see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, or even if you don't see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, as long as you keep walking, it'll eventually show itself. Staying still and staying stagnant does nothing for you. It only makes the smell that much worse. It only, completely permeates your clothes, right? You're justifying why you don't need to keep walking. And I'm telling you, based on my experience, we should all keep walking. Why? Well, because that's how we get through this stuff. Not by short-term games, not by sitting around and building a fucking, shack in the tunnel of, let's hang out and watch football in this sewer-filled freaking tunnel. That's not what we want to do. So I want to take a second and kind of share with you what I think are attributes of real men. What a real man wants to live up to. And it may not happen immediately, and most likely it will probably happen over time. But this analogy of getting out of something or no longer wanting to feel any emotional discomfort, I want to give you the example of a really long tunnel. A really long tunnel that you can stand up in, okay? And it's in between your knee and your top of your shin, filled with the most disgusting smelling sewage. It's walking into a porta potty and stepping in it and then walking. You know what I mean? It's just imagine the most disgusting fluid inside a tunnel. And when we recognize, or when I recognize that I'm in a transition, or I'm in a period where I've tried to do so many short-term solutions to a long-term problem, I finally wake up to the reality that instead of walking in the tunnel, walking out through the sewage that may be dark and pitch black, but You're not going to get anywhere if you just stand there. Short-term solutions to long-term problems are the equivalent of sitting down in this sewage and chilling out, waiting for the bus to arrive, maybe taking advantage of some people. I don't know, but you're not walking through. You're sitting down hoping that it goes away. And when you become so tired of the stench and how it makes you vomit and you just want to get rid of it, you want to run out of it, people who understand the long-term solution start walking. They start walking and trudging through this tunnel that could be completely black, but they're walking in one direction. Because ideally and hopefully, and it's usually been the case in my experience, you'll walk right out one of these things. The only way out is through. Now, how long it is, I don't know. I remember asking a father figure of mine, I'm in so much emotional fucking pain right now from this divorce. Like, I just need you to tell me that's going to go away in 3 months. Like, just give me a countdown. And he's like, I can't. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? He's like, you just got to keep walking. I was like, fuck you. I don't want to walk anymore. I want this to go away. And dynamics like this don't ever go away. They only get worse if you do nothing about them. That's why I use the analogy of the tunnel. And that's the analogy that he shared with me. You got to keep walking because the only way out of this stuff is through. Okay? And so what happens is when you're walking through this stuff and you're taking actual action, whether or not you're making progress is irrelevant. The fact is that you're actually doing something about it. You're doing something positive and you're walking. You may have to stop, take a breather, grab a freaking Kit Kat. I don't know. But you're still walking. Every day you get up and you keep walking and you keep walking. And inevitably what ends up happening is you see a glimmer of light in the tunnel. And you know that you're near it. You know that you're near the through. Okay? And you feel better. You don't hurt as much as you did a day ago, a month ago, a year ago. You've gotten yourself adjusted because you're taking action. You're actually moving forward. And because you're doing that, you're, asking for help, which you should. You're acknowledging how upset you are, and you should. And you're moving forward. Now, using this same analogy, I would argue that the true definition of what a man is capable of doing is no different than the analogy that I just shared with you. Real men acknowledge that they're in between. Real men accept that they have tried 1 or 2 or 10 or 50 or 100 short-term solutions that have never worked out. But they've never tried the long-term. They've never started walking. Because that requires work, that requires effort, and you don't know when the outcome's going to come. It comes when it comes. You just got to keep walking. All right? So a real man, in my opinion, is going to understand the 4 values we just talked about and the opposite of those 4 values. And if the 4 values that are really bad spit out and become real, you might try some short-term solutions that don't give you any gains, but then you recognize that the long-term is the only way through. All right? And what I would say defines a man is their ability to accept that. Is their ability to say, oh my God, those are the things that I did, and looking back on them, I can't believe how many people I hurt. Or I can't believe how I bulldozed over people. or I can't believe how selfish I've been, right? I'm not asking for perfection here. No freaking way. But all I'm asking is, can you identify? Can you identify with the analogy of being in the tunnel and not walking versus walking? Now, the other caveat that I would add to this is that a real man who's walking in the tunnel and continues to keep walking might be shouting and asking for help. Okay? So if in the tunnel, you're walking forward, right? You're making progress. You feel like you're making progress. You're going somewhere. You don't know where you're going, but you're going. And in the meantime, every 10 minutes you stop and you scream for help. Fucking help me! Help! All right, no one's answering. I want to keep going, right? And you're in the tunnel, right? And, one day where you've done this, for hours upon hours, what usually happens is somewhere on the outskirts of the tunnel, someone's walking by the outside of the tunnel and might hear you screaming help, right? And they get close to the tunnel and they go, yo, are you fucking in there, dude? And you're like, yeah, I'm fucking in there, man. I need some fucking help to get out of here. And then the guy might say to you, all right, listen, you're doing fucking great. Keep walking the same direction or follow my voice for the next 1 minute and you'll know that you're heading in the right direction. I've seen the exit of this tunnel and the sewer and the sewage slowly goes down and you'll finally kick out the other side. So just keep going. Trust me. I know you don't want to ask for help, but there's other people that are on the outside of this freaking tunnel that are willing to help you because they've been in that fucking tunnel themselves. So keep asking for help. Now, a real man takes accountability for those short-term gains that aren't gains, and a real man stands up and asks for help. And you would not believe how hard it is for men to even do that. I've said before on this podcast, and I'm going to say it again. Men will carry the fucking load. All right? Marriage problems, put it in the backpack. Financial problems, put them in the backpack. Children struggling at school, put it in the backpack. I'm just going to carry these rocks around with me all day long, despite the fact that this backpack's 80 fucking pounds now and I can't handle another rock. But if it comes, I'm going to put it in here because that's what I'm supposed to do. When in the reality is, a real man takes off the backpack, dumps it upside down, and starts picking out and looking at all the rocks and what they all mean. And what's the meaning of them? And are you accountable for some of those rocks being there? Or are you not accountable for some of those rocks being there? And then do you not want to put any more rocks in your backpack anymore? That's how real men should spend their time. And the reason why is that I believe this is what we're meant to do. We're not meant to be selfish all the time. We're not meant to not collaborate and connect with other human beings, right? We're not meant for short-term gains that don't end up to anything. We're supposed to suffer a little bit. I think it was Carl Jung that said, there is a necessary suffering that is associated with being a human being. And here's the reasons why. Because when you suffer through the shit in the tunnel and you keep on walking and you keep on believing that it's going to end and you keep asking for help and dudes that you don't know can hear you behind the tunnel and encourage you to keep walking, eventually, when the time is right, you'll punch through the other side. And let me tell you what happens. It is identical, no difference than when a lobster sheds its shell. You follow me? Right when you punch through the other side, maybe a day or two later, you will feel a need to shed your shell. And why? Well, because you have grown out of whatever you were when you were in the tunnel, and you need to, build up some protection in your new shell. And that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes time. But we have to, or we need to, or we should come to some understanding of accepting the long-term gains and the necessary, not like you're in trouble necessary. The evolution of man has a component of growth that is hard, and you suffer through it, right? Like, it's just hard. How else can you explain it? It's not like doing Murph or, lifting weights. It's something so much deeper and something that has so much more meaning to it than anything else, right? People may call it character building. I just call it growing, right? But if men aren't used to doing that, they're going to revert to what they've always known. And most of the time, what they've known is a dialogue and a process that tells them to stuff it and not ask for help. And I'll tell you, that'll kill you. That will absolutely kill you. It will lead you down a road of pain and anger and misery where the taste of a pistol barrel in your mouth becomes the norm. And you just lack the courage to do it, or you already would have done it. It's hard, man, right? It's hard. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I like it. I don't at all. And I fight, and I kick, and I scream, and I yell, and I act out on people that I love and say unkind things to them because I don't want to keep walking in that tunnel. I don't. I need a break. I want to sit down in the tunnel and just watch the fucking football game. You know what I mean? I just want to keep watching the football game. So that's the idea behind the in-between man. It's acknowledging that you're attempting to do the right thing. And I'll go through what the right things are, right? It's a morality and ethical principle. Is grounded in 4 essential values: acting with integrity, considering the well-being of others, prioritizing long-term consequences over short-term gain, and adhering to the universal standards of morality, even in the absence of external accountability, right? Perfect example would be that guy on the outside of the tunnel. He didn't have to stop. He didn't have to say, yo, you're doing a great job. Keep walking down that fucking tunnel. I'm telling you, trust me when I tell you, there's an end to it. He didn't have to do that. He just did it because he's been in there too. It might have even had somebody do the same exact thing for him, right? So it's hard doing the right thing, man. It's hard accepting that this anger and frustration will be around for a while. But the difference between knowing that you're angry and frustrated versus not knowing and acting out the same way is the difference between a man and a real man. A real man takes the time to understand these things because they have integrity, right? They are willing to help people without getting a pat on the back, all right? Without asking for money. They just do it because it makes them feel good, right? Accepting that long-term growth is the only way out. There's no shortcuts, man. No shortcuts at all. It's a humbling state of mind, but it's an active state of mind. And if you don't know how to do being in between, I can teach you. It's not hard. It's really not hard at all. It's just, if this podcast has made any sense to you, then you can do it. And I can show you how. Right? And the only thing that it does require is patience. Right? Accountability. Looking at your side of the street. And a willingness to want to walk through the fucking tunnel. And some days I have it, and some days I don't. And most of the time, I choose not to do anything because I don't want to do something bad that impacts and harms anyone else. But I also don't want to do the work that is required for me to keep moving in the tunnel. So I stay in the stagnant no man's land where I just deteriorate. Like this mental rigor mortis sets in, where I'm just like, you know what I mean? And no one wants that. No one ever wants that. So do me a favor, check out the In-Between-Man, thein-betweenman.com. You can see the types of services that I'm offering to the public, to you. I am offering these services, but I'm only offering them. I have a limited amount of time that I can actually do this type of work. And so I only work with 4 clients at a time. And I'm heavily invested in you, assuming that you're also heavily invested in you. And we can create a plan and a process of accountability that makes sense to you, where you understand how you're feeling and you're taking accountability to try not to do it anymore. It seems like an easy concept, but it's not. The other fact that I'll leave behind with you is that being an in-between man is understanding the good and the bad, right? And how we get stuck in between. And, you know, there's another component that's associated with that I haven't wanted to, bring up or even dive into because it's such a controversial topic. And I don't think you have to have it if you're willing to look at those things. But, the absence of faith in this process is not by accident. I don't want anyone to think that they have to have faith in order to move forward. But what I can tell you is that if you start, it's only going to help you. And that's just another aspect that we can figure out and move on and go through together if that's what you wanted to do. You can sign up for free at the website for a free 1-hour consultation. Free 1-hour consultation where you and I will sit on the phone and ask each other questions and talk about what the GOTR, GOTR methodology is and what it means and how it incorporates doing the right thing and how it incorporates, learning how to navigate through long-term growth and what that encompasses and many other aspects. So get cracking if you want to learn more. And I hope you do. There is a necessary suffering that human beings have to go through. A necessary suffering. All right. Do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Again, I got some iced tea in here. I've watered it down. It's sugared iced tea. It's Milo's. And I got some water in here to just sort of cut it a little bit. You know what I mean? And some solid filtered water. So get yourself a beverage. If you need to, start the podcast all over again because none of it made sense to you and you need to hear it a second time. But you know what? I'll see you in there. See you on the next one, gang.